Back-to-back comebacks. The Cardiac Kids, whatever you're going to call them. The New York Islanders have had a brilliant start to the week. I don't know that we could encompass everything that happened in those games as brilliant, but the results, anyway, turned out in their favor. They took 2 of 3 in their Midwest swing. They eventually lose to the Red Wings. After that loss, they found a way here. Some big takeaways, James Nichols, from those games. I guess I do want to start with the Blues game because we spoke right before then, and it seems like a million years ago because there were 4 games since then, so it's a little hard to wrap our head around.
Yeah.
What say you about that game? And ultimately, the Islanders have won 7 of 8, and in the last 4, 3 of 4.
Yeah.
Beginning with that game.
It's just it's one of those things where, like, you go into that game, you feel really good about the Islanders in that game because they won that game against the Colorado Avalanche. Previously, not too long ago, coming back after being down 3-0. They come out in the first period against the St. Louis Blues, and they just don't look good. It's like, oh, here we go. Like, the back and forth. Like, are they good again? Are they not good? Like, what is this team? And Vladimir Tarasenko puts the Blues up 1-0, and they come out in the second period and just friggin' explode for like 4. Was it 4 goals or was it 5? It was 4 goals. One by 4 different goal scorers, mind you. It was Palmieri, Brock Nelson, Josh Bailey, and Anders Lee. 5 goal scorers total in that game. JG Pajot put the pretty bow on it. And I after that game, I started to think about, the sentiment that we had spoken about for a couple of years now when, the Islanders got Palmieri and they got Pajot, and it was like, this team doesn't have one necessarily. Let's not necessarily. They don't have one sniper who's just going to score you a ton of goals, but they have a few guys who are just going to put up a bunch of goals, right? Not necessarily a perennial 40 goal scorer, but a bunch of 20 goal scorers, right? You're starting to see that come to fruition. Nelson's got a bunch, Lee's got a bunch. You can always bank on that. But now Palmieri's scoring. Oliver Wahlstrom has 4, although he's slowed down. We could talk about it. Zach Parise has 4. Like, there's a bunch of guys contributing up and down the lineup. And in that St. Louis Blues game alone, like I said, 5 different goal scorers between Palmieri, Nelson, Bailey, Lee, and Beauvillier. So, I mean, and Pajot. So, it's a couple of things here. Like, the defense is getting better. The offense is clicking. I would say I don't know. It takes them like 40 minutes, and then suddenly that it's working. And they're just continuing to get stellar goaltending. This is why the goaltending tandem wasn't broken up this summer, like everyone had wondered if they would be.
Yeah, it was, that was the 5th win in a row. And we had seen them play fairly solid. If not 60 minutes, it was mostly, 2 good periods. And that was one of those games too where they that first period wasn't great. They came into the second period and they blew the doors off of it, scoring 4 goals. And I think to speak to your point of 5 different goal scorers, we had joked, God, for what are we on episode 129 tonight, 28.
Yeah, 129.
We've joked for 128 episodes, make it 129, that they have 3 second lines. And
Yeah.
really, for the first time in the offensive zone on the score sheet, anyway, previously under Trotz, now under Lambert. I suppose it's a new era. But since we've started the show, they really, on paper, it was clear like there was depth, right? Like we could see it. There was a lot of potential for this to happen. Under Lambert, you're finally able to see it.
Right.
And these games and the comebacks and specific, like starting with this Blues game, you're starting to see, like, they didn't need, they won 5-2
Yeah.
ultimately.
Yeah.
they didn't even really need to do that. If they could lock it down a little bit better later in the game, it, that could have been a 3-1 game. That would have been more of a Trotz win, 3-1. They would have just
Yeah,
scored 3 quick goals in the second period, and that would have been the end of it. But they're playing a little bit more run and gun, but they're actually seeing, as a result of that, the depth is really showing that you're not just relying on Palmieri's on a cold streak, and it just so happens everyone's cold streak lines up. You're actually seeing like everyone's being able to contribute different nights. One night it's Parise, one night it's Palmieri, one
yeah,
night it's Brock, one night it's Wallstrom. So like the fact that Wallstrom's been cold hasn't really done anything, right? He needed it. We'll talk about the last game and where he started against the Rangers on the fourth line. But I think you're not relying on him, is what I'm trying to say in particular. Or Barzell hasn't scored any goals. Wallstrom has only got a few, and it's been a while. Like it took a little bit for Nelson to get going. They were still winning hockey games, and they were finding a way to do that. And I think it really and I think this Blues game, and it just to kind of start, just because that's the game we're starting with, um, really shows that. Um,
yeah. And it was funny because like you were talking about the goal scoring just now, and I quickly wanted to look up what the goals for per game are at the moment, and I expected this number when I looked at it to be higher overall rank in the league. They're scoring 3.5 goals a game, which is almost a whole goal more than they were last season, at 2.79, I believe. So now, obviously, goal scoring is up this year. I think the goal scoring has gotten increasingly higher every year. Um, but that has them ranked or tied for 11th with the Pittsburgh Penguins, who we know can score goals. Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and company. But three and a half goals. I mean, when was the last time we could say that of the New York Islanders? The last time we could say that was when Doug Waite was behind the bench, and it was all offense, no defense.
yeah, I wonder what it was during that 17-18 season, if only for that stretch and not
Yeah.
that entire season. And I'm showing on Hockey Reference anyway, 49 goals for, seventh out of 32 teams. And really, what I thought was interesting, and I didn't really like. I knew their goals against was good, but just because they're scoring so many goals, you flip the switch a little bit. Not to say anything bad about the goaltending, but the goaltending, goals against 36, ninth out of 32. That's still really good.
Yeah.
So 2 or 3 goals a game really isn't a big deal. They haven't gotten into any too many barn burners. I mean, the Avalanche game was 5-4.
Um,
Um,
yeah.
but outside of that, like a 4 goal against game is rare, if that might be the only one, unless they got beat. Um,
Yeah. It's like, you notice that they're keeping the the it's hard to say the trot system is still in place, right? Because obviously they're playing more run and gun, like you said, a little bit more of a wide open game. However, when they're in their own zone, what they did or what they're continuing to do, a la trots, is limit those shots and opportunities to the perimeter rather than in below the dots in the slot area. Those high danger chances, they're limiting those. It's largely just stuff that's happening from the perimeter, and hopefully, the for the opponent's sake, that they can catch a rebound and score that way. But it's really been limited. So um, it's definitely you know this is what Lamorello built his team, in my opinion, to do. Right? I think he believed that the scoring could come from all four lines. The defense would be just good enough. And this was before they had Romanov and Dobson broke out, right? The defense would be just good enough to be able to be buoyed by the goaltending of, when it was Leonard and it was Grice, and they were a really good tandem together. And then it was Varlamov and it was Grice, which was still another really good tandem. Now you have Ilya Sorokin and Semyon Varlamov. Probably, the conversation right now, which we can talk about too, is that Ilya Sorokin is maybe better than Igor Shesterkin, and if you want to get into that a little bit later. But you're looking at possibly, one of the best goaltenders in the NHL, at least top three. You don't need, I mean, of course you want your defense to be good, but you don't necessarily need them to be on point every night because you know he's going to make those saves for you. And if you're scoring, if you're scoring or sacrificing 2 goals, but you're scoring 4, you still win in a game.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately in the long term, you're seeking to fix that, whether that's a trade deadline acquisition, which if the Islanders keep in, playing at this pace and they're in a playoff position, come February, March, whenever that deadline is, our schedules are all messed up. I can't really picture when that actual trade deadline is. I imagine sometime maybe early March,
It's mid March, yeah.
mid March. You imagine there's something that's going to happen. Lamorello, despite some offseason hesitancy or whatever it actually is, he has made moves at the deadline when they were in it. And Pajot, Palmieri, last year there wasn't anything. So this year there may be something again. I don't know if he did anything that first 18-19 season. Nothing's coming to mind as they went to the playoffs. I don't remember exactly where they were at that point in the season, but be that as it may, um, eventually they do have to figure that out. They do have to play a little bit more of that playoff hockey. Now I understand the regular season not wanting to bog your team down with that. And I
Right.
think that's why I'd warn them out under Trotz eventually, after 3 seasons of it during the regular season and then long playoff runs. Locking it down later in the season is going to have to be a thing. They are going to have to figure it out.
Yeah.
And as evidenced by, like obviously against the Chicago Blackhawks and the Blues, they are in the midst of a skid and they really weren't going to give the Islanders too much of a hassle. Islanders also had some momentum. They were playing really well, so they had some confidence there. But then going against a team like the Red Wings, who I can't recall how they came into that game, but like they've been playing pretty well too, definitely above expectations, and they'd kind of
Yeah.
been there for a while, since the beginning of the season. It's not like it was just out of nowhere, kind of like the Islanders, where they were like a middling team at 2-4, and then all of a sudden they win 5 in a row, and yeah, it does wonders for you in the standings. The Red Wings have been kind of like chugging along a little bit. They get down 2-0 and then just like can't find it, and
Correct me
you're
if I'm
gonna
wrong.
run
That
into that, but
that was
it's a
a
little
that was a
tough.
matinee, right?
It was a weird start. It was
So
a day game, and they've historically not been good in day games. Although I don't really
right.
know if I like looking at things historically like that because,
No,
but
but that
it's either way.
I did want to just make like it's not an excuse they shouldn't like not be good in day games, and whether that's they're not on the same page about how they're spending their nights before a day game, or they like you said historically haven't been good in matinee or 1 o'clock starts. So it's not an excuse, but it is something that they do need to figure out, because I mean, I don't know how many more of those there are on the schedule, but still, I mean, if you're, you don't want to drop those games, like that's a winnable game against the Detroit Red Wings.
Yeah, there aren't any the rest of this calendar year just from glancing at the schedule really quick. So that's it's definitely fair. I think you just have to figure it out. I mean, like compared to the adversity they saw last year, a matinee game is the hurdle. Like that's a pretty low bar. Like I understand it's kind of screws with your
Yeah.
schedule and um as a avid pregame napper, um when in more like quote serious playing days, I completely understand that. Um I don't know. Like you said, I don't know that I would use that as an excuse necessarily, but
No.
it does play a factor. I can respect it a little bit, but yeah, they don't look good. There's a real lack of energy. That's what gets you worried, right? The winning streak is snapped. How are they going to respond? How are they going to bounce back? This is where, and I was thinking about this earlier because I was starting to write my Isles Weekly piece for the Hockey Writers, which I need to finish. Hopefully, it's out by the time you're hearing this. But how are they going to respond? Is it the veteran group? And it's we were definitely those people saying like maybe they're getting a little too old. Maybe this window is closing. Um, they need to try to get younger, and they did, right? Wallstrom is now a regular member of the lineup. Romanov, um, Strogan's a starter, so you can include that on a night to night basis for every 2 or 3 games anyway.
Yeah.
Um, that he's that he's young. Dobson, Barzell, Bavillier. There's a good crop of players, and for the most part, those are the players that are playing really well too. And then there's kind of that slightly older group in Lee and Nelson and so on. Um, but is it the veteran presence that they go into this game against the Calgary Flames and the Rangers, and we can kind of lump these two together a little bit too, just to for ease, just because they were both very similar games and how they came back and all that. But do you think it's that veteran group? I mean, they've been together a long time too, right? So even if they were a little
Yeah.
younger, that probably has something to do with it. But do you think it's a combination of those two things that's playing the biggest role in all this?
Yeah, I think it's I think it's a good mix of both the veteran group and the injection of the youth, right? The veteran group is there to not only lead the way on the ice, but also on the bench and in the locker room where, Anders Lee or Brock Nelson, Josh Bailey, when they're down 2 goals in the third going into the third period in the locker room, they're turning around saying, "Hey, don't get too low, right? It's just 2 goals. We could do that in 20 minutes. It's not a big deal, right? We're still in it. We can climb back here." And you have, the Romanovs and the Dobsons and the Barzells and the Bavilliers who have the foot speed and the stamina and the cardio to continue playing at that high level, for 55 minutes into a game where it's coming down to the wire. You get a game tying goal or whatnot. So it's definitely a good mix of both, and it's again, a veteran group who's been together for a while, who kind of knows like where each other's going to be, and they've really bought into the system, but more importantly they've bought into each other because they really want to see this through. And that's why you saw guys like Kyle Palmieri extend for 4 years, Anders Lee 7 years, Brock Nelson, he signed a little while ago, but I mean Matthew Barzell just signed for 8 years. Adam Pelech just signed for 8 years. He's got 7 years left. Ryan Pulock is on the first year of his 8-year contract. So these guys all want to do this together. They want to be together, and they're just buying into the system, into each other. And I think it's just they have a good mix of both the youth and the veterans right now, which is something that we've been wanting to see for a while. It's good to see Wallstrom in the lineup as much as he is. His recent deployment is not that great, which we'll talk about, but there's definitely something going on with the Islanders right now in a good way. Stinkers are going to happen, right? The 3-0 loss is bound to come right here and there. As long as you limit it to here and there, it's how you respond, and they have friggin' responded.
Yeah, I think what we were talking about early in the season and what I was keeping an eye out for was them giving up on each other, even when they're down 2 goals or whatever the case is, um, or even just long losing streaks. Sometimes you're going to lose 3 or 4 games in January.
Right.
It's not ideal, um, but if you're in a good enough position, it's just something you can bounce back from. But we're seeing them play for one another. There was a couple of really great articles. Kurz, Pantorno, Rosner, a lot of these guys got very similar quotes from them just believing in one another that they can do it and kind of pull together no matter what. I think it definitely speaks to the veterans. It definitely speaks that they've been a group for a long time. And even when they're going through adversity, I think they've been going together for long enough that they're not going to give up on one another.
Right.
And that's the mark of a good team, I think, frankly. And that's how you can come back against the Calgary Flames, who are in the midst of a losing streak, but that's an easy letdown game. That's an easy game to go into and look at that team and not take them as seriously as you should have. And frankly, they kind of went into that and they didn't play very well, right? They did have to come back. I think looking at both of those games, um, against the Rangers, just because recency bias is just it's a little more fresh, just because I can't believe those games are back to back. That was a little insane. But
Yeah.
the Islanders looked like shit. I think for stretches, you're not seeing them play 60 minutes, and those felt like games that I would have normally turned off. If the other team scored one more goal, I would have just turned it off.
Right.
But the Islanders they're getting back into it. Some things, the penalty kill is coming back down to earth a little bit, but the power play's working. Like they're finding different ways to win all of these games. You are seeing the depth kind of shine through. Dobson scoring that overtime goal. Um, but everyone's contributing. As we were probably just going to beat that into the ground a little bit. But like thinking about Palmieri getting 5 goals in early November, he didn't have 5 goals till December last year.
Right.
The Islanders didn't even have this many wins until December last year.
Right.
So you're just looking at a team that's kind of been able to put it together. I worry about the inconsistencies. I do want to touch on that a little bit later. I worry about how those games started. Like, how far out of hand do the games get? This is now the third one, right? Like they've been an amazing third period team, even second period, but primarily third period team where they've scored. Is it 26 goals now? 25 goals, leads the
Yeah.
league in third period goals.
It's like 26-11 or something like that.
Yeah, they're outscoring opponents. That's crazy. That's really good. You like that, but I don't know. There's something about like eventually it's going to get out of hand. Eventually you're not going to be able to do it.
Right.
There's preparation meets opportunity is luck, right? And that's only going to happen so many times where you're presented with an opportunity and you're prepared to do it. On back-to-back nights, that's nuts, right?
Right.
And you let in a lot of goals. It's not like a 2-goal comeback, right? They have to score
Right.
4 goals a game. Like that's
Well,
I mean identical games. Like that's crazy to me.
I was prepared to come into this show tonight and to ask you this question specifically. Like, it's great to see the comebacks, like going down two goals into the third period, and it not once, not twice, but 3 times. Is it 4 at this point that they've come back and won these games? It's great that they're able to do that, but is it sustainable? Can they continue to play this way, come from behind and win in the third period?
I think they're learning a lot of lessons in a short period of time. That's what I'm hoping for anyway. No, it's not sustainable. But if they're learning that they can overcome anything, they're never out of a game moving forward. And I think that there's definitely something valuable there, but it's not you can't rely on that. That
Right.
cannot be your bread and butter. You need to just go in and like the Coyotes. I just want to see them annihilate the Coyotes.
Right.
Full 60 minutes, no holds barred. I don't care if it's a 2-0 game, right? The goalie can stand on their head and do it. But that, at the end of the game, I want to hear Butch say, if it wasn't for that goalie, it would have been 9-0, right? That's the kind of performance they need to do, against the Arizona Coyotes and like take care of business. The Flames and the Rangers are no joke. Even despite, they're both of those teams' recent struggles, they're still no
Yeah.
joke. The Rangers looked really good, right? They got beat. There's some
Right.
power play goals, and the Islanders playing a little bit desperate, which, God, years ago, you would have killed for some desperation on this team and some energy. It just always looks so flat. So it's good to see that. They just kind of always they need to start the game like they're behind. They need to pretend they're playing with a handicap. They're not starting like they mean to continue, as an old boss of mine used to say. And they just need to do that because eventually it'll run out. That luck will run out. And
Right.
the thing is, they're not relying. I think they have really decent shooting percentage, but I keep going back to PDO, and I wrote about this over the weekend, even after the Detroit loss. That luckily it's not the shooting percentage that they're relying on. They're really heavily relying on the save percentage end of things, but that's the reliable part. Sorokin's not just
Correct.
going to fall apart. Varlamov's not going to fall apart. Your shooting percentage can just die. You can just hit nothing for a while. It's entirely possible. A lot of guys are that have considerable points. I mean, Anderley's shooting 20%. That's not sustainable. Palmieri's 16%. And they're just looking at guys with like five or more goals or 4 or more goals. Wallstrom's at almost 14%. Parise's at almost at 12. So like, that's not necessarily sustainable outside of the fact that so many players are well over 10%. And okay, so a couple guys can go cold as long as not everybody at once goes cold.
Right.
But to me, the way that I'm reading it is that the save percentage and the goalies are really carrying the quote luck part of it. And I think there's, and I also wrote about this. So was it the St. Louis game where Dobson knocks that puck out of midair? It could have been. Yeah, I think it was against the St. Louis game. He knocks the puck out of midair on the blue line or on the power play as somebody was coming out of the box, and O'Reilly was trying to get the puck to him, and Dobson's in no man's land, and he even said as much. And they're playing high risk, high reward hockey, and they happen to be getting rewarded for it, for taking those risks. That's not sustainable either. That's part of the problem to me, that sometimes they're just getting beat and they need to tighten up. Other times they're just playing high risk, high reward, and because they're racking up the wins, it's easier to be like, oh well, something's working, and they're coming back and they're doing this stuff. It makes it complicated. You kind of want to see them go on a run of a little bit more dominant games where they're clearly winning, and it was kind of earlier in that winning streak, right? Chicago and so forth, where they were going in and just winning hockey games.
The thing is too, right, and at the risk of making this sound pessimistic, we promise we're optimistic about this team right now, and we will continue to talk about some optimism moving forward. But the wins that were most impressive were against those highly touted teams in the Avalanche, the Rangers and the Flames, right? Those aren't necessarily teams right now though that are succeeding, right? They're going through their own little slides in their own respects, and it's still fairly early. It's about to be mid-November almost, which is crazy to me. But those teams you anticipate turning things around, right? The next time the Islanders see the Colorado Avalanche, I don't know if you can anticipate them, falling apart like that again. Are they going to get healthy and have Val Nichushkin and Gabriel Landeskog back? Are the Flames going to have Jonathan Huberdeau? I think he was playing against the Islanders the other night, but he was out, I think, last night, and so are the Flames going to just figure out whatever it is that's going on with them? Because I don't even think Jonathan Huberdeau, even though he was playing, is playing that well right now. So
he's playing way too slow. But I think you can look at some of those other games. 3-0 win against the Rangers, 6-2 against Carolina. Yeah, they played a high-powered team in Colorado. I think that's fine. You also, as the Islanders, have some control of that, right? You're not worried about a Colorado collapse so much as you have to control the tempo of that game. You can't let them get up 4-1. You have to go in there and control that a little bit more.
Which is my point. You don't want to go into the third period still being down 2 goals, right? The sustainability of playing from behind and winning in the third period, that's not something that you should be priding yourself on and looking to do, right? Because teams like the Avalanche eventually down the line are going to figure out how to close that door. The Flames are going to figure out how to shut that door, right? Those are the games that if you're going to be a contender, you need to win, and you can't consistently do that by playing from behind.
Nassaumen Hockey is brought to you by DraftKings. NFL Sundays are only getting better, and so are the incredible offers at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 on any NFL team to win and get $200 in free bets if they do. Check this out. Right now, everyone can earn up to 100% boost with DraftKings stepped-up same-game parlays. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app, place a same-game parlay, and combine multiple bets like which team will win, player props, and points totals. You know I'm going to bet that Zach Wilson's going to throw 2 touchdowns. With payouts bigger than ever, DraftKings Sportsbook is my go-to when betting on the NFL. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now, use promo code THPN, and place a $5 pregame moneyline bet to get $200 in free bets if your team wins. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL with code THPN. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details.
I want to go into because we're getting in some of the nitty gritty here. So I want to go into a segment that I'm going to call three up, three down, and I want to go over kind of six items in no particular order, and I want to start with what I have as number two here, but just because you mentioned it before, in Oliver Wahlstrom, who started on the fourth line against the Rangers. Again, a little bit of recency bias, but he hasn't exactly been noticeable lately. He gets what some are calling a kick in the pants. Wanted to get your opinion on that.
You know, it's funny because, like I said at the beginning of the year, you could see the parallels between how Noah Dobson's breakout year went with how Oliver Wahlstrom's breakout year could go. And I wonder if that's starting to happen. Right, it's November now, and Wallstrom's getting the opportunities to succeed, but is he necessarily? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. You're seeing the mistakes happen here and there. He gets demoted to the fourth line against the New York Rangers. You wonder if that healthy scratch is coming. Right now, you're looking at a player who just needs to slow everything down around him, right? I think he's trying to think too fast because he's trying to maybe keep up with a line mate who is a bit too fast for him, um, and maybe gripping the stick a little bit too tight and not, completely thinking through his positioning on the ice. And Lambert did make the comment that he's doing the little things right, and the small details are all good and fine, but there is work to be done. You're just waiting for him to put it all together. And I wonder if that same blueprint for Dobson and how his breakout year happened will happen for Wallstrom, because right now it's almost like he's following in those footsteps. And if he just takes a game or two and really, whether it's from the bench or from the press box, observes the game and really takes it in, and then gets back on the ice the next day or two, you know, whether it's on the top line or not, you might see, a guy like him evolve the way Noah Dobson did. I see those parallels, and I wonder if it could happen, but he does need to work on, making sure he's in the right place at the right time, and not finding himself out of place and behind the eight ball there, because that's what's been holding him back from succeeding in the top six. He just hasn't been positionally right, and I think that's what's hurting him the most.
He does have 7 points in 13 games, and he's a
He
plus
does,
six, right? Just
yeah,
looking at like not anything underlying, and he's got 29 shots. I think the quality of those shots could be argued a lot from the outside.
yeah,
Him and Palmieri as righties often put themselves way too wide on the left wing. It's always a curious decision. I think I even tweeted that the other night from our
yeah.
account.
You did.
I just I don't understand. Especially, and they're on 2-on-1s or 3-on-2s with Barzell, and they're way towards the dot, and that's a really
Right,
weird angle, and I don't understand it.
and
He
that's what I mean
also
by positional. That's why he's not been in the right spot when he needs to be.
yeah, he's also rushing the puck.
That too.
He's forcing plays. He's making bad passes. I mean, frankly, Barzell does this on a regular basis, and it's very frustrating for a player of his skill level to just force the puck when he doesn't need to. Frankly, the entire team, it's part of those mistakes. Um, One of these other things is just like or on the downside of things is the inconsistencies. Sometimes those passes are great, and sometimes you're like, that was a Bantam age pass. That was a Pee Wee level mistake. Like I don't understand what you're thinking. You're just like forcing this play, and Walsham did it against the Rangers, specifically um at the opposing blue line. And the Rangers are way too quick. A lot of teams are way too quick. The Devils, who you cover really close to, like, they're gonna eat the Islanders alive on a regular basis this season. Um, and if it goes the way, they're both kind of like 2-3 in the standings right now in the division. But if it's a wild card or whatever the case is in the playoffs, this is we're not even a quarter way through the season yet. But if that's how it shakes out, like in a 7-game series, I think I take the Isles, but like the the Devils are gonna give them uh quite the scare.
Yeah.
I think That's really tough. So those little mistakes, I saw Wallstrom do it last night and a few times, and you're like, dude, just like, and Lambert said just more of like a north-south game, which is why he started on the fourth line. You want to see that from like the whole team. Nelson did it a couple times. Just inconsistent play. Like and I hear Butch on the call. He does this all the time. Just get that puck deep,
Yeah.
especially like late in the game. You have a lead or whatever. You're just trying to play it safe. Like they try to make like one extra pass. And you're like, Barzell's done this too. Like, yeah, just put the puck in the zone. You're gonna get off anyway. Like you're too tired to make a play, and that might be part of it. It's late in the shift. They're just making a mistake, and that happens all the time. You're just not enough oxygen. Making a bad decision, but too many times, and it's like very inconsistent, and it leads to a lot of mistakes for the team.
Yeah, the one major difference between how the Islanders play and how the Devils play, they're both playing fast pace right now. However, the Devils do trump the Islanders in foot speed per skater, and the thing about the Devils is they'll carry the puck into the zone and be able to find that space to set up and cycle the puck. Whether it is skating it over the blue line or dumping and chasing and winning those puck battles along the board. Islanders don't necessarily cycle the puck too much, and I think that's the major difference. Something that I think that because I've noticed that the Islanders are still scoring decently well off the rush, right? You saw the new formation of that Lee Nelson Barzell line, and a rush comes via Barzell, and Nelson puts a shot on, and I believe it was actually in the Ranger game, right? Shesterkin makes the save, and what do you know? Who's there to clean up the garbage? It's Anders Lee. So that's the major difference there, and I think that's why the Devils system actually works a little bit better for a guy like, for instance, one of their young guys, Fabian Zetterlund, who's in the lineup. He's able to, play at that foot speed, but also set up in the zone, and he's fast enough and skilled enough to be able to cycle the puck like the Devils do. I would like to see the Islanders do a little bit more of that. I feel like they would benefit from more rotation within the offensive zone. I don't feel, and look, they're scoring goals, and it's all great, and they're scoring off the rush, and you can't take away from that, but they need to be able to do or score and produce in more than one way. And I think that's something that they definitely are lacking. Right? There's a consistent shuffling of the deck chairs with the five skaters on the ice, whether it's with the defensemen and the forwards. You have three down low with the forwards and two up on the point, but the defensemen are cycling with the forwards down and forwards coming up to the blue line, and it's just really pulling all the defenders out of place, and really just making everybody turn their head in kind of confusion.
I mean, more shots and things would also help the Islanders offense as they set up in the zone too. Just because, and Butch pointed this out last night, those shots get, as you just said, gets the defenders and the other team turning their head towards the goal, and you wind up losing players. Right. And I think that might be, part of this, and only really being able to score off the rush. Although the last couple of games they've done a lot better with, that obviously the Dobson goal, Pellick scored a goal. They are finding more opportunities to score while sustaining some offensive zone pressure. But that might have to do with our third thing here, which is the poor power play so far, for the most part. Again, outside of the last game or so, where they, overtime goal against the Calgary Flames, and then 2 of their 4 goals against the Rangers. And they've taken a ton of penalties. That St. Louis game was abysmal. The Detroit game, the officiating was terrible, but the Islanders put themselves in a bad position where you notice that type of thing. This really should just say special teams and taking penalties. Or power play and taking penalties, and lack of discipline is probably inconsistency in discipline in this section. But that might be why they're struggling on the power play, is that they don't have that chemistry yet. But I think I'm trying to think through this in real time a little bit. Lambert wants Wallstrom to play more of a north-south game, and that's the way that the rest of the team is playing. That's not going to allow you time to set up and set up some pressure, right? That's going to create a lot more rush opportunities. And that might just be Lambert's style. Romanov's jumping into play. That Mayfield goal where he was like, what game was that? Where Barzell found him and Mayfield was like
That
below
was the Colorado game.
the Colorado game. He's just like below the hash marks and on the side of the crease on the right side. Like, the hell's he doing there? Even if it was a power play, I think that's where it's just it's a little bit different, and we have to get used to that. They could stand to cycle more. I don't disagree. But maybe that's just the style, and you're not going to see as much of that, and that's the high risk, high reward.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Off the rush, you can score a goal, but if you take a shot and miss the net, and you're on your offside or something like that, something that I wish the Islanders would do a little bit less, frankly, because they're taking shots and it rings it around the boards. Defense can't get there. It's like a free clear for the other team. Got to get better. Just you have to hit the net, or at least square. Get square to the net, and it hits the glass, at least behind the net. You're making them go 200 feet, to use a hockey cliche. But it allows the other team to kind of get out of the zone, and that, some of those mistakes add up, and we've seen it, right? They've had to come back in a bunch of games, or at least making, even if they're not down and they're just back and forth third periods or something, like gotta be able to figure that out, or the rest of the game. Playing that full 60 minutes with that focus, like, you could see it's very clear what they're able to do when they're focused and they get together. You just have to start like that. Now, you don't want to have a collapse. You don't want to start too strong and not be able to maintain that throughout the game. But like the other way is just as not sustainable. So you have to find that balance and be able to, tighten up on defense. And that was going to be one of my downs too. Like, overall, the defense doesn't look great. They're getting beat. Last night, watching that Ranger game, I don't know if you noticed this. They got beat to the outside. Pelech and Romanov. So maybe it wasn't any one side in particular, but I felt like I noticed on the near side, maybe in the second period, that they were just getting beat on the right side. Exactly like, Charles last season. Like, they were just exploiting something on the Islanders. And it's happened a couple times where there's just like speedy forwards and they're able to just very easily get around the Islander defenseman. Keandre Miller did it, if I'm not mistaken, in the first game of the season against the Rangers, 3-0 win against the Islanders, where he just zipped right around the defense. Like, no one touched him.
Yeah.
So it's trying to, they do as maybe as a fourth thing, but maybe part of that inconsistency, because sometimes it is really good, but they need to tighten up. Like, it just can't be falling behind this far.
Yeah, I do think, though, first I want to say you're right, but part of that too, you do have to attribute to the fact that, like, your example against the Rangers. I mean, they're such a fast team, right? Keandre Miller is so fast on his skates. Zibanejad, like that whole team is just a really fast team. So we do have to credit some of those skaters, but you're right. There is something to be said about how often they're getting beat. Maybe that has to do a little bit with positioning. It's a new system, and the goal is to push the puck up the ice, and in order to do that, maybe you have to cheat a little bit, and back to the high risk, high reward, like you said. Like, if they're doing that, then obviously they're going to maybe be giving up a couple chances against, which is why we said they solidified two of the best goaltenders, or the best goaltending tandem in the NHL. So it could be a systems thing. I do think, though, Adam Pelech himself hasn't been very Adam Pelech-like this year.
That pairing, Pulock-Pelech, has not been as strong. Forget about on the offensive side of the puck.
Right.
But just in general, no, they're not as defensively dominant as they have been. You're seeing some moments where I'll say this. They're definitely the best pair in the defensive zone. But it's not saying a whole lot when you compare what we're used to seeing out of them.
Right.
And it might be, like, there's a couple opportunities. Some of the forwards are flying the zone pretty early, and they're kind of guessing. It happened with Wahlstrom tried to get the puck to Barzell the other night. Dude, he was at the other blue line. and he guessed that the puck would come out, and someone dove on the other team and blocked it. But so no harm, no foul. The puck got out of the zone one way or another. But again, some of that high risk, high reward, like they're not as focused in their own end, and maybe the defense ultimately can't handle it when it was a 5-person unit in their own zone, and you had the defense could handle that. I think it's a little bit harder when they're isolating. They've also made some bad mistakes. They've also been like some big miscommunications. It happened last night. 2 players, or the night before, 2 players went to 1 player. It was against Calgary.
Right.
They were just like wide open. Player was
Right.
just Backlund or whatever in front of the net. Just that can't happen. Like again, that's like
Yeah.
some peewee level mistakes where everyone fell in love with the puck, as my old coach used to say, and that was it. You just left somebody open. Like 2 or 3 guys just go to the puck with 1 player on the opposing team. Yeah, you have 2 players open, and it was easy. Like Calgary just exploited that, like 3 times for the most part. So I always have to figure that out. I do want to get into some positives. We have a couple more segments here. We're rolling through these things, trying to
We
keep
are.
it to 10 minutes a pop here, because we can be verbose, which is a fancy word for we talk too much.
We talk a
This is
lot.
this is a podcast though, so it's part of it, but you have to limit it. It's very confusing. You just wouldn't understand. I'm just kidding.
We have to do it the right amount.
We have to have right that sweet spot. It's difficult. So we did 3 down. Let's do 3 up. The Islanders penalty kill for the most part. Outside of maybe the last 2 games, against teams with a lot of offense, it's been really good, and I think it's the mark of a good team, and I think it shows that the team still has that defensive structure, and that they still can rely on one another, and that it's still a defense first team. I think that proves that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, 100%. It's just a matter of having good positioning and that's one area where their positioning has been really good. Clogging lanes, blocking shots, having good sticks, and being aggressive. And that's one of the things that's the word really that Lane Lambert has stressed for this team to be is aggressive. So although you're down a skater, you're pressuring that puck at all times. Whoever has the puck on their stick, you're pressuring it, and you're trying to take it away from the offender and dump it down the ice. So that's really the crux of it right there, is that they're just doing mechanically everything they're supposed to be doing when killing a penalty, and it starts with just being really aggressive to clogging the lanes and making sure that you get good sticks on sticks and not take penalties. The hooks this season have just been very loosely called. Like, there's been plenty of hooking calls I haven't loved, or slashing calls I haven't loved. But they're doing a good job of staying disciplined in that area while down a man and not going down 2. So yeah, they've been really good, and obviously they weren't going to kill them all, but they've killed a lot of them, which is a lot more than we would have thought. Last year, I would say, I don't know what, like at this point, 50% of those goals go in.
Yeah,
or those power plays go, become goals, really.
yeah, they definitely felt like they gave up a little bit.
Yeah.
By the time they were taking penalties, they felt like they were out of it, and it didn't help that they were down a player at that point. I do also want to say on the PK front, they're getting good clears, and that's really what's helping. They're getting their stick on the puck, and they're finding a way to get out of the zone, and
Right.
that's been really good. Parise Clutterbuck, who was out last game, and had Stashnikov starting on the first line. We didn't even touch on that.
No, we did not.
A curious choice for sure. And then it obviously didn't last very long, but you could tell he didn't play. He hasn't played in a while. Sashnikov looked a little rough. Definitely.
Wait, that wasn't Kiefer Bellows?
That wasn't Kiefer Bellows.
Sorry,
God,
had to do it.
That was that was like 3 episodes ago, right? So Sashnikov doesn't even play that much. I do want to say really, really quickly, but because we went ahead and I had it up and then I took it down. Wallstrom's played the 3rd least on this team as far as time on ice is concerned per game. He's at 12 minutes, just over 12 minutes. The only two players that have played less are Matt Martin and Cal Clutterbuck. Now,
Yeah.
Cizikas plays on the penalty kill, but Wahlstrom doesn't play on the power play.
Right.
On either unit so far this season, or certainly not in the last number of games. Peugeot has kind of taken over. I think even on the first unit, he was out there. Maybe that some of it's been switching around, so it's been hard to keep track of. But some personnel changes there, but not too many. Just really absent of Wahlstrom. I just wanted to quickly point that out before I forgot. The second up, got to be Ilya Sorokin. You talked about him being better than Shesterkin. I'm here for that conversation. I think they both have a lot to prove. Sorokin's played a considerably less games, maybe 20 or 30 less games than Shesterkin. So I think Sorokin has a little bit more just like, hey, can you do it? I think 2 full seasons pretty much puts it in that conversation. So he's well on his way. I do also want to point out, and I'll let you kind of get your 2 cents in here. Shesterkin hasn't played well against the Islanders. He's 1-7-1, and
like
the
an
one game
880 save percentage.
and the one game he won was when the Islanders were down with COVID and had Andy Andrew off or whatever.
Yeah.
So there might be some specific bias, not just Islander Ranger bias, but you're only seeing him not play very well, and Sorokin for the most part outplay him in those games. I don't want that to cloud anything. I want to look at I think that's important that when they play head to head, Sorokin and his team play really well. Although Varlamov was in last night and who's had a hell of a streak against the Rangers and had his shutout streak snapped last night at 250 minutes or something ridiculous like that, 4 games and plus.
Yep.
So I don't want that to cloud anything, right? Shesterkin didn't play against the Islanders, that 3-0 loss. It was Halak. And then Sorokin didn't play this time around.
Right. They haven't played each other yet.
Well, it's not always that matchup that you're. I think
and unfortunately, for some reason or another, the Islanders and the Rangers only play one more time the rest of the season. It's friggin' November 9th. That's a crime.
Yeah, I think that's the scheduling is definitely interesting. I think when you're playing every team in the league at least twice, once at home and one on the road, that's a lot of games. So it used to be 6 games in your division,
something like that. Yeah.
I mean, I want to say it was 8, frankly, but maybe it wasn't quite that high. But it was a lot of games, 4 or 6 games. 3 games is tough. It does make those games matter a lot, and the fact that they've won 2 or 3, when it comes down to it later in the season, that's frankly the Islanders just banking points in general, right?
It's really they already won the season series.
Yeah, it's really important that they have that as a tiebreaker kind of thing against a lot of these teams in the Eastern Conference. I don't really care how they're doing it. They're coming back, and I guess that's the moral of all of this. Who cares how they're getting it done and coming back and all of that? Have your struggles later. Bank those points, get in a good position by Thanksgiving, and go with it from there. You're just in a way better position for yourself mentally. But go. I want to get your 2 cents on the Sorokin Shesterkin debate.
Both all-world goaltenders, right? They've proven everything they could have from the outside of the NHL. They come into the NHL, and they're both dominant at this level as well. I think both of their bodies of work, although Igor Shesterkin's is a little bit bigger, is enough to prove that they are legitimate, I would say, franchise goaltenders. I know for a fact that Frank Saravalli labeled Ilya Sorokin as a franchise goaltender for the Islanders. Same for Igor Shesterkin. Now, obviously, Shesterkin has that Vezina to hang on to, and that feather in his cap. But I think that although Shesterkin had a monster year last year, there's just something about Sorokin, and when you watch him, he's got I think it's the athleticism, it's the explosiveness, it's just those, Shesterkin, maybe I want to say mechanically, he's just always positionally sound, and he's blocking just enough of the net where you can't see twine, and it makes it really hard for the shooters to score just based on how good he is positionally. Um, Whereas Sorokin does that, but also just has that athleticism to boot. Like, how many times have we spoken about? Did you see that friggin' Sorokin save? Holy shit! Like, what the hell is this guy drinking? That with his Mike's secret stuff. Like, what is he? What is it about this guy that he's got these jaw dropping saves all the time? It's you have to attribute it to the athleticism. So, um, again, I think their bodies of work outside the NHL and then what they've done in the NHL are enough to classify those guys two of the best, if not the best in the NHL right now. Um, you know, the conversation at the moment is Sorokin might be better than Shesterkin, and that's
I think
probably just
this season for sure.
well. I was
I
just
think
gonna
that's
say,
safe to say. They're both. It's interesting because they're both put in similar positions where they kind of have these iffy decors at the moment and kind of solid offense, and they're
yeah,
being depended on heavily. Like Shosturkin carried that team to where they were last year, and then
right,
the offense, like the defense was tough, but so they're both in very. It's a little more apples to apples than any other goalie matchup that you can like when you're comparing to goalies in the NHL because they really both are in similar positions.
yeah. It is apples to apples, but at the same time, the orange here is that they don't necessarily have the same style of goaltending. I think
Oh,
that
I think it's different. Shesterkin seems a little bit more um, calculated movement, and Sorokin is very athletic. It's just
yes,
two different styles for sure.
right. So I mean, listen, there's an argument to be made for both sides, but um, like you said, when it comes to at least the rivalry, 1-7-1 for Shesterkin.
That's
Sorokin rises to those occasions, and there's no denying that Shesterkin has done it himself in the past, but not against the Islanders, which is arguably his biggest rival.
I'll say this and then we'll move on. I remember early on when Sorokin was when with the Islanders, like really really early in his tenure. It hasn't really been that long, but I remember saying to you on this show. I wish I could find the clip. I didn't. Obviously, I have no idea where it is or what episode. But just saying that, I wonder if the Islanders goaltending coaches would like Sorokin to play with a little less athleticism because he had at bat when he first got here. He was all over the place. He
Yeah,
was really like utilizing that and kind of relying on that a little too heavily. And now he's even more calm, cool, and collected in the net. He's definitely
yeah,
better positionally than he was when he first started in the NHL. Again, I recognize he's not played 100 games yet, but when he first started, it was kind of like the equivalent of like Tavares when he first got into the NHL and he looked like he was skating and it was like a mop just flying all over the place or just like spaghetti like it just was not graceful at all. And Sorokin definitely has changed considerably um, since joining the Islanders. Whatever it was 2 years ago or so. Um, we've touched on this, but I definitely want to at least make a mention before we move on because I see that you added some significant notes here. So hopefully we can move past everything pretty quickly. Um, Third periods definitely not sustainable, but exciting.
yeah.
And
No, 100%.
yeah, I think you want to know you can pull that rabbit out of your hat when you need to, or even pad your lead. But I would not, you know, as not a great hockey mind, I still wouldn't recommend that as a strategy. I don't think that's what they're thinking. Like, oh, we got them right where we want them. That is not what's happening. But they're building confidence, and at least they can
Yeah,
do it if they need to.
yeah. The negatives of that, like we said earlier, is that you don't want to make it a habit because you can it'll become, if it becomes a habit, you're going to do it against the wrong teams, and they're going to punish you for it. But in the same breath, they're not allowing themselves to get too low, not allowing themselves to take themselves out of the game and find a way to come back and get 2 points. So it's a sign of a good team.
Absolutely. I'm gonna hand the reins over to you because you have
Okay.
some notes here to end the show, um, and I don't know what they mean, and I bet you do.
Yeah.
So I'm
So
gonna hand it over.
earlier today, the Boston Bruins put Mike Riley on waivers, and one of the things that I wondered was, does it make sense for maybe the Islanders to make a waiver claim here? He's a left shot, left-handed defenseman who, quite frankly, is up for grabs right now, and we know that the left side next to Scott Mayfield isn't necessarily. I want to say claimed, right? It's right now in the hands of Sebastian Aho. Robin Salo has been, in and out of that lineup, but you know, Mike Riley on waivers, is that a guy you want to take a shot on? He's what is he, 29 years old at this? Yeah, 29 years old. Um, he's not necessarily the most offensive defenseman, but I mean, at this point, do you really need it? You're not getting much from that bottom pair anyway. So, 4 goals, 13 assists last season. He's got 1 assist in 10 games this year. But again, you're not picking this guy up to get you a bunch of points. You're just really looking for somebody who could be a steady presence on the blue line. Doesn't necessarily play in much of a different system for the Boston Bruins. Is it a good idea to take a flyer on Mike Riley to solidify the defense?
I'm not sure. It puts the Islanders in a position I would that a difficult cap situation. Right now they have 3.6 million. Now it's give or take with Robin Salo up and down, and best I know he's recalled again.
Yes, he
Um,
is.
I think you roll with this for a while. You might regret not doing it, but if you're in a good position come February or March, you make a different trade if you really need to improve. I don't think this is you're going to regret the $3 million if it doesn't work out, as opposed to like working with a Salo and Aho at this moment. Neither of which are that playing. Lambert definitely rolls his defense, but Mayfield and Aho or Salo are definitely getting used in only certain situations, and Aho is like invisible in third periods and in certain times of the game. So like I'm not. I wonder if that $3 million is worth it to then not have any flexibility. Um, I'm not sure. I know he was definitely somebody you had your eye on in the summer, if I'm not mistaken. You definitely
Yeah,
mentioned that, but I don't know. For $3 million, I think we have somebody maybe just as good, not with the NHL experience. So there definitely is that. I don't know if that's worth $3 million of your cap space to then have a little bit more of a struggle at the deadline to kind of fit people in.
right.
I'd rather regret not bringing him in, frankly, and have that space later to make a bigger move. If you're going to spend $3 million, there's better defensemen for that price and for 2
Yeah,
years. So
yeah.
you're not just. I think you're locked up, and I think if it was a different player, Lamorello would jump on that because I think that is something that he wants. But Salo is going to figure it out and make this team. Romanov is going to be more like maybe if Mayfield's not around next season, but like that's a different offseason problem, right? Like we're trying to just look at the trade deadline and the playoffs. Like I don't know. I think that is a trade that doesn't solve the problem that you have or all that significant of a problem at the moment.
Well, not a trade, but a waiver claim. But speaking
Something.
of trades, um, listen, way too early to be talking about this. I know that, but things look good for the Islanders, and right now, second in the division, fourth overall in the NHL. Who would have thought that this was going to be the way it was? And the other day, um, The newly formed Lee, Nelson, and Barzell line. I mean, that line, very short sample size, but from what you saw in that small sample size was greatness. If I'm being quite honest, right? You saw three of the Islanders' best players on the same line who just clicked right away. You had your shooter, you had your distributor, and you had your guy to clean up the garbage in front of the net. Ideally, the kind of line you want to have. Let's say for some reason or another that becomes more consistent. Do you is there somebody you have in mind that would be a good acquisition to fill the center role if Matthew Barzell winds up on the wing? Because I have one. But before I say mine, I want to know if there's anybody that you might have in mind. Is getting a center the right call, and if so, who?
If they're going to lean into that as a line and not just in certain situations, it's a lot like Toronto when it's like you put maybe Nylander, Marner, Matthews, or Tavares, Marner, Matthews, or something like that together on a line every once in a while. Um, I, I don't know. I think this is definitely way too early. I want to, I really want to say that Ratu pops off in the AHL and
Yeah.
they stick him on the third line, kind of move everybody up a little bit. So Pajot's quote second line center, and they kind of move some things around. You wind up having like an extra winger around, even with the call up, and then you don't have that option for a seventh defenseman. So their roster space thing is interesting. Like a player, as I said all summer, or everyone said all summer, a player needs to leave the roster to like make this actually work. So I'm not like they could put Soshnikov on waivers, I guess. Like that's a pretty easy thing. Like who the hell is going to take that guy? But he's good for the Islanders as a Clutterbuck replacement. Like I don't know what the rest of the league looks like as far as like that kind of need. But so I guess that's a pretty easy solution. But yeah, I would love for Ratu to kind of make his way up and just make that choice for Lamoriello and the Islanders. I honestly have no idea. I was like not in that headspace. Who are you thinking?
Yeah. So as I'm, thinking about the other day, I'm like, this line looked really good. Like maybe there's something there. I wonder if, and it's not Lamoriello style to, in the midst of a run to the playoffs and well into the playoffs to call up a guy who's a rookie and doesn't really have much NHL experience, right? So you wonder if Ratu does get that call yet. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. If he does, it's great. But if he doesn't, and Lou Lamoriello wants to make a move at the deadline, I'm looking at the Canucks again, right? And the Canucks are actually, as we're recording this, losing once again 3-0, just not playing well at all. Forget about JT Miller. That is not where I'm going with this. Don't even think about Elias Pettersson because that's not where I'm going with this either. I'm thinking of contract year Bo Horvat, who tell me that is not the typical Lou Lamoriello move to do, where he goes out and he buys another team's captain, a leader in the room, somebody who would probably fit in well with the Islander mold. He's still fairly young, and 12 goals in 13 games right now.
That's ridiculous. I did not know he's playing quite that well. What's his cap? I like haven't thought about outside of like the Vancouver Canucks suck. I haven't really thought of that. Yeah, he's 27. It's $5.5 million. You got to move some money around. I think that's part of the problem. Again, it's like the only thing I'm going to point out for the most part is
Sure.
that like how, and then what does it cost to get him, assets wise? Because he's 27 years old. He's like in his prime. He turns 28 during this season. So he's got maybe 3 or 4 years left before you start having a little bit of concern. So if you can buy that time in a 6-year deal, I don't think that's terrible after re-signing him after this season. $5.5 million. I don't know where you find it. I think that's a great idea. I mean, that definitely. I guess I don't want to have this conversation necessarily because we just stopped. Like it's 14 games and some exhibition games in camp away from us just dealing with this all summer. I understand having that line together it's a good exercise to at least be like, that line works. Why would you not do that? Why would you not put them together more often? I think it's a good tool, something that you can have in your back pocket. You're seeing the Islanders have success though, just up and down the lineup. If it dries up and you need to put that, you're finding yourself, if you're Lambert and you're finding yourself putting that line together more and more, yeah, you make a call upstairs and say, we need something here. We need to figure that out. You're scoring 3.5 goals a game. Now is really not the time. I keep this going until you have to make that move, or it's closer to the deadline. Personally, I don't think it's a bad idea. I just don't know. Now is not the time. But as a trade deadline thing, maybe.
Tell me that a guy like Bo Horvat is not your typical Lou Lamoriello move.
I don't know about typical. I mean, I think he's it'd be one of the younger players that he's been able to bring on the team. It's another UFA. There would need to be like either a sign and trade or something going on where he's
right.
signed,
Well, no,
like
I
Peugeot,
also
like,
mean like a captain of a team. He fits the mold, plays the Islander way, yada yada, like that kind of guy, glue guy.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, I don't know what's going on in Vancouver. Like, if he's not carrying the team right now, does Lamoriello want to bring that? I mean, and someone like Bo Horvat would thrive in a new environment even more, right? And he's carrying the team. Someone's got to score, even if they're playing like shit. Like somebody's going to score the goals. So at least he's the one doing it, and he's leading by example. And if the rest of the team isn't following him, it's a different problem. But
yeah,
it would definitely work. I do want to say I remember playing a few seasons of NHL, and I haven't played this in like so many years. So maybe. How long has he been in the league? 6 years?
I think it's been a little bit longer than that, but
So
something like it.
2005. So it's funny. 2014, 15. I remember playing GM mode in like NHL 2012 or 13 and playing a few seasons. And I remember Bo Horvat continually coming up in the draft. Like every time I restarted or something like that, you just play long enough and like there's real players and juniors that like eventually come to fruition.
Sure.
It runs out and eventually you just get like no name players. They just go back into like the 1918 thing and it's like Bojack Carpenter or like some like just weird names. They all like sound like old timey boxers or something.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I remember Bo Horvat coming up in that all the time, and he had like a decent thing. I always had to draft him, so it'd be interesting for the Islanders to get him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's on pace for his best year by far. He had 31 goals last year. He has 12 and 13 games. He had to go on a serious cold streak to not continue that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, of course, he's going to make this team better. I don't think that goes without saying. As far as a typical Lamoriello move, yeah, he's a leader. I mean, I think it's, bringing that kind of thing in there and plus some very obvious goal scoring. Yeah, I mean, it seems obvious outside of the logistics, which is like makes right, like, oh yeah, that makes a total sense outside of actually making it happen, which leads me to no, it doesn't work. But yeah, definitely way too early. Would love to see it. I mean, if you're gonna go for it and you're gonna try to win a cup this year, something's gonna happen, right? And Lamoriello is a midseason guy, so I don't put it past him.
All right, so now I want to get into last week that we did trick or treat. This week it is not Halloween themed, so I just wanted to do a little bit of buy or sell to end the show, and
We'll rip
think
through it.
it's a little new segment we're gonna do here on NHP. But Buy or sell, Noah Dobson at this time is in the top 10 in points among defensemen at ninth overall. By the end of the season, he'll be in the Norris conversation. Are you buying or are you selling?
I'm gonna bet on him. I'm gonna buy on that. Um, if if only because I think he'll get Norris votes. I don't know about the whole conversation. I don't know about actual voting at the end of the day. I think the conversation is fair considering how he's played. He's not very strong on the defensive side of the puck, but either is Adam Fox necessarily. And I think Adam Fox is better. I don't want to confuse anyone here, but there are a lot of similarities between their games and the way that Dobson's kind of stepped up really all season. Um, I'll buy on that.
Yeah, I'm going to buy on that too. He's got 4 goals to this point, and 2 of them have come as game winners in overtime. So he's not only doing it when, he's not only doing it in regulation, but he's doing it when it matters most and in clutch moments. So I'm going to buy on Noah Dobson as in the Norris conversation by the end of the season. Okay, Matthew Barzal will finish the season with 20 goals. Currently has none, but he'll finish with 20. Are you buying or are you selling?
Selling. 15. He's gonna have an absolute ridiculous amount of assists. He's gonna have 70 assists, but like, I think he's gonna be a point per game player. I think, but it's gonna be like 13 goals and whatever the rest of that in assists is. Not a math guy. Let's see. 13 goals. A nice 69 assists. Easy to remember. So yeah, I think it'd be 13 and 69 for a clean 82 points at the end of the season for Mr. Barzal.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough to reach 20 goals with the rate that he's shooting at, 2.7 shots per game. Probably want to see him shoot maybe 1 or 2 more pucks per game to say, yeah, at least he's shooting the puck at a high volume. Maybe he's just a little bit snake bitten right now. So maybe he'll start to find the back of the net a little bit more, but he's not currently shooting as much as he could be shooting at 2.7 shots per game. You'd like to see him at maybe 3.5, but he is not reaching that at this time. So who knows? Maybe he'll reach an uptick at some point. But at this time, no, not buying on Matthew Barzal scoring 20 goals. I could see 15 to 17 sounds like the right spot. So
I'm going to stick with 13.
13.
Yeah, I originally said 15. I think it'd be 13. I'm trying to think of some like weird number. 15 is like too clean. Yeah, like 13 goals. I do think he hits a point per game, but
yeah, I think he'll have something like he's on pace for I think 88 assists. I don't think he'll have 88, but I think he'll have 75
for sure.
And last buy or sell here, we have the Islanders currently have 3 players playing at a point per game pace or better in Brock Nelson, Anders Lee, and Matthew Barzal. At season's end, all 3 will reach the point per game mark. Are you buying or selling?
The way that they're playing right now, I want to buy on that. I wonder if it'll be those 3. I wonder if Lee can keep that up. I think he'll keep the goal scoring, and same thing with Nelson to a degree. Like I think they're goal scorers. So I wonder who else might it be in that conversation. It could be these 3. I'd buy on that for sure. But I wonder if there's somebody else that might step up and slide one of these players out. I think. When's the last time the Islanders had 3 players with over 70 points in a season?
When's the last time they had 1?
Also fair. Also fair.
I think it was Barzal had 70 2 seasons ago. He was gonna probably reach that 75-point range until the season got shut down.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
It's almost like the the late 90s rather, where it was like Palfy and everybody else. It was like right. Barzal and everybody else. And then even the last few seasons, it's kind of been like Barzal's got 60 points or this or whatever. I would just like to see 3 or more players get over 70 points, where they have a bunch of guys get 20 goals again. Something that they were able to have on a regular basis, 5 20 goal scorers, this, and this. Like they have to get back to a little bit deeper of a lineup. But they definitely have that. I think they'll have a bunch of 15 goal scorers for sure. Around that anyway. But I'll buy on them.
Yeah, I think I'm going to sell just because the history doesn't present itself as favorable to this scenario. I could see Barzell getting point per game, no problem. I could see Nelson reaching close to, if not getting it. I just have a hard time believing that Anders Lee does hit that point per game mark. He's doing it right now, which is great, but like you said earlier in the show, he's shooting like 20% or something like that, and that's not easy to sustain. So 60 points would be great though from Anders Lee. I think that's something that you can say is a really good season for him and his style of play. And who knows? What is Anders Lee's career high? While we're on that subject, I don't know if it actually has ever reached the 70-point mark. I do believe he's had 60 points in a season before. No, his career high is 56 points, which he had. No, I'm sorry, 50. Oh no, I'm looking at the wrong column here. He did have 62 points in his 40 goal season. 40 goals, 22 assists in 2017-18. But then since then, or in and around then, it was mostly 50-point seasons.
Yeah, it's been tough. And then he was injured. He's coming back. This is really his first year back at full strength, and you can see what he's able to do. So it's entirely possible. The way that they're playing, if they can keep the goals per game up in general, and everyone's contributing, hopefully they're not doing it in quite the heart attack fashion as they have been the last couple of nights, and made a little bit of a habit of kind of falling behind. Reverse Vancouver Canucksing, I suppose, because Canucks just like fall apart and then can't do anything. At least the Islanders are falling apart and putting it back together by the end of the game. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Next game against the Arizona Coyotes. I think it's time for us to wrap it up here. Getting a little late on a Wednesday, weird night. Hopefully we'll get back to the regular schedule. We're trying to balance James' schedule here, the Islanders' schedule. I'll eventually have something else to do. We'll see what happens. But I think that's the end here. Any last thoughts or?
Yeah, tweet out that picture of you at your hockey game the other night posing as Nick Leddy. That was hilarious.
Posing as Nick Leddy. You said that before, but I don't. Maybe I haven't really posted too many pictures. My girlfriend. I had some really early games lately, so they've been like 6 o'clock or like 5:45. So, my girlfriend's been coming to the game, so she snapped a picture of me coming off the ice the other night. Yeah, some sick green kind of Hartford Whaler. Yeah, Hartford Whaler colors, which is pretty cool. And I got the nice lime green socks going. I need to get the matching socks with the actual stripes on it. But I gotta say, I gotta get a new stick because it broke. I had it for like a year, and it's a true AX5, maybe it was. I'm sure it's something special. Somebody that's more of a gear nerd would know. And coming from someone that used a wood stick up until like a year and a half ago, I'm not the guy to ask that.
Yeah.
But I got the CCM stick and I hate it. The blade is weird. It's like too long. I like a shorter blade. Like the way the lie is weird. Like I'm just not liking it. I cut it a little shorter because I wanted to like compensate for it to get me to get a little lower, and I'm just not enjoying it. All my equipment is so old, and then I like get a new stick, and I just lose it. I just can't. I can't handle it. Everything I've had. A lot of the things I've had for like probably way too long. But yeah, I need to find a better stick. I really don't want to spend another $100 though. That's kind of like until this breaks. This is kind of what I'm using.
Yeah, I'm surprised to hear you say you didn't like the CCM because I'm a CCM junkie. But to each his own.
It's just the blade's too long, so the way that you have to like hold it on the ice is weird. I prefer a little bit of a shorter blade. I feel like it's a little snappier. even on the wood stick, the blade was even though the coffee curve was ridiculous. It is my backup stick. I still do have one, but it's still a shorter blade that you can get the puck off your stick easier. This one seems like a little too long, and I'm struggling to like just snap it. It's just not rolling off the stick quite the way that I like. Granted, I play once a week and I don't touch the puck all that much outside of passing. I'm not the shooter on my team. Although I did have a hat trick in my first game, so not a big deal. Gets
Humble
you a
brag.
free pint at the bar at the rink.
There you
Got
go.
a lot of that. Also, if we don't get any penalties, I think we get a pitcher. But hey, it's that small victories at the God, this rink is terrible. If anyone, so this is a very Long Island thing. If anybody remembers Sports Plus, this is like way out. This is like in the Smithtown area. This rink is a lot like that as far as the ice is concerned. I remember the ice at Sports Plus would get so bad. First of all, it was like Adventureland on one side of this building, like indoor park arcade. It was like an indoor roller coaster that could not have been safe. There's no way. And then the other side there was an ice rink, and very frequently the ice would be very thin on one end to the point where the concrete would come through, and they just like put a cone up behind the net,
Oh God.
and it was like, oh yeah, just don't skate over there. It wasn't even like it's a little wet. Sometimes it happens to warm out. This is like there's like no ice. It was like a pretty regular occurrence.
The way you described your rink though, that's not atypical. My rink was the same way. There was, one side was the ice rink, the other side was the, this whatever game area where, there was like rides and stuff as well over there too. So
Where'd you
not
play?
not atypical. I played in Woodbridge. I played for the Woodbridge Wolfpack.
Is
At
that
the
near the?
United Skates of America.
Is that the one where you had to pass like the jail or something going out to Staten Island? I remember I
No,
played.
no, that is the Staten Island Pavilion where I also played.
I played there.
Have you played? You played there?
I remember playing there. Yeah, because they were like but I played for PAL, and this is 2005, 2006. No, 2006, 2007. I was playing 18U. Back then it was midget major, and I remember parents like threw stuff on the ice after we won, or something happened. Like they were like throwing stuff. I was like, oh yikes! I'm not. Maybe it was like rec time at the jail, and that they did let him come out to the rink or something.
Yeah, well, I didn't play very long there for reasons that are now abundantly obvious, and I moved on to, and my dad said enough of this. We're going to Jersey, and started playing for what was first the Woodbridge Wings, and then we became the Woodbridge Wolfpack. And I played over in Jersey for a while. So the Staten Island Pavilion, no. Although I did work there in my later years as a skate guard, I just made some money there. But I did not play there very long. I played over in Woodbridge.
Did you play the Hitmen?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when I went to Silver Sticks. Again, this is like 2006 or whatever, or probably around this time. I have the hoodie still. We played like the Hitmen. It was like the Pennsylvania team. It was like the Quakers. Literally had like the oatmeal guy on their jersey. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
It was like literally like a Quaker with like hockey stick or something like that. Was it? There's a New Jersey, the Brick, right? They had cool green jerseys too. They were good.
I think, yeah. I think I know who you're talking about.
God, it's going down like a rabbit hole of weird stuff just because of a crummy rank. Yeah, this is a terrible one, and it's freezing. If anyone's played up in Ramapo, so this is like north of Yonkers, I think, or maybe in Yonkers. That rink was one of the coldest rinks I've ever been in. And there's one in Yonkers too. Is like it just had a roof on it, and you had to walk. The locker rooms were like these other small building off the main building, and it was just a roof. So I remember playing there in like February. It was freezing.
Oh, it was Mullet Arena.
Oh my god, what a nightmare! Are the Islanders in Arizona
No,
this week?
The
No.
Arizona Coyotes are on Long Island. Yeah,
they're on a 14-game road trip. They're in the midst of
they
that
are
right now. So Islanders really need to kind of pounce on that and get those 2 points there. That's that's absolutely got to happen. Tweet us a crummy rink that you played in either on Long Island. My home rink was the Rinks for anyone out in that area, the Hop Hog area. Played at the Freeport Bubble. That was a crappy rink now that I'm thinking about it too. There's like Kings Park, Superior. Those might be the same thing. There's a couple of them. Tell us your rank, even a roller hockey rink, Sports Arena, American Inline. We want to hear about it. Need some throwback stuff
for sure.
There was Skate Safe in Bethpage. I remember I saw like a professional roller hockey tournament there once. It was very weird. maybe it was a college tournament. It was whatever. It was very weird. All right, I think we're at the time. That's the point in the show. We're gonna wrap it up there. I don't know if that's a good ending or not, but we're gonna call it. It's not gonna get worse. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen or watch the show. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Asselman Hockey. You can find James' work at The Fourth Period. You can find my work at The Hockey Writers. Make sure you subscribe to Isles Fix. They are at an everyday pace at this point. Great catching up via email. James, bring us home.
Until next time, everybody. Let's go Islanders.